Let's start by examining an anatomical model of the foot. If we move forward, there's a ridge on the calcaneus, the Sustentaculum Tali. About a centimeter above this, we have the medial malleolus. Moving forward, we have the talus, the navicular, first cuneiform. We have the first metatarsal, the proximal phalanx, and the distal phalanx. An interesting point here is as I roll this foot forward slowly, you can see the size difference between that first metatarsal and the other ones. It's practically double the size. Now that we've gone through the anatomical model of the foot, we're going to go ahead and identify and landmark some of the key structures on Mickey's foot. We've gone ahead and we've highlighted the joint lines in red and some of the key bony landmarks in this darker black marker. So starting at the back once again, we have the calcaneus, which is here. As we move forward, there's a ridge on the calcaneus, which we've highlighted in this dark kind of horizontal line, which is the Sustentaculum Tali. Now that forms a bit of a shelf, almost like a balcony, that supports the talus. Moving further upwards, we have the medial malleolus. Between the medial malleolus and this dot here, which is the tubercle of the navicular, we would have the talus. So if we look at the joints in this area, we have the subtalar joint, which is between the calcaneus and the talus. So if you were to grip this with your hand, whatever's comfortable, you move it back and forth, a little bit of rotation, you can feel where the two bones are moving between each other. We've highlighted the angle of the talocrual joint, which is the ankle joint, in this red line here, and that's showing us the angle of the joint. You can test that by moving the foot into dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, and just moving it back and forth, and you can really palpate where the two bones are moving. Now, as we move further down, you can see this joint line here. This is the line between the navicular bone, where the dot is, and where the talus is here. This forms the Talonavicular joint. So if you were to get in there, create a bit of motion, you can feel where those two bones move in relation to each other. Now, moving forward, we have another joint between the navicular bone and the first cuneiform. So that is the Calcaneonavicular joint. Once again, get in there, try to move things back and forth, opening the joint up. You're not going to get a lot of motion, but a bit, and you can identify where the two structures are.Moving further down the foot, we have the joint between the first cuneiform and the metatarsal. So this would be the Tarsometatarsal joint. So once again, grabbing with your hands, move the bones ever so slightly. You're going to get a bit of motion there, and just identify that joint line between. Now we follow the length of the first metatarsal, and we come to another joint. And this is the joint between the first metatarsal and the phalanx of the big toe. So this would be the Metatarsophalangeal joint. And that one's quite easy to get in there. You can kind of move the toe into flexion, extension, even a little bit of rotation there, and you'll be able to identify the joint between. Moving further down, we have the interphalangeal joint, the distal interphalangeal joint between the phalanxes. And that's quite easy to palpate. Moving the toe back and forth, a little bit of rotation, you can identify that joint. And so, as you can see, all the different bony landmarks and the spaces between them form the joints and bones of the foot.
So let's go over some of the ligaments on the medial side of the foot and ankle. One of the ones that's really important is called the deltoid ligament. Ankle sprains usually occur on the lateral side or the outside of the foot, not on the inside. And one of the reasons is this is a really, really strong supportive structure. Now, if we go and we take basically the circle around here, as we mentioned before, Evangelos mentioned, this is the medial malleolus, and we have the Sustentaculum Tali underneath here, which is a part of the calcaneus. Basically, part of that, we run across here like this is going to be part of the deltoid ligament. And then this little dot up front here is what we call the tubercle of the navicular. So part of that will actually run across over to here, and we'll have a little section back on the talus here. Now, this is an incredibly strong ligament. It's designed to take a lot of stress on it. So it's not usually ruptured. It is ruptured in some cases, and we'll get a strain on there, but because it's so strong, it usually doesn't happen. There's one other structure I want to mention while we're here, and this actually goes from the calcaneus over to the navicular, And it's a really interesting area because anatomically we don't have a joint in between these two areas. We actually have an open area, and it's the soft tissue structures in between that actually support the medial side of the foot. Now it kind of runs over from the Sustentaculum here down to the navicular, and this actually is called the spring ligament, and this supports the medial side. And it's a very important structure, and which is reinforced by a muscle that we'll get into shortly called the tibialis posterior, and this provides a lot of support for the medial side of the ankle. Okay, let's go over some of the muscles in the lower extremity that actually attach to the medial side of the ankle. There's a really interesting area around here where the tendons from several muscles, which are really deep to the calves, wrap around the medial malleolus and connect in here, and this is really important for the stability of the foot. Now, there's some really simple ways of remembering this, and we refer to it as Tom, Dick, and Harry, and the and actually has significance too. If we're looking at Tom, we're looking at a muscle called the tibialis posterior. If we're looking at Dick, we're looking at the digitorum longus, flexor digitorum longus, and refers to artery and nerve. Artery being the tibialis posterior, nerve being the tibialis posterior nerve. And Harry, the last one on there, is the flexor hallucis longus. Getting a bit of a tongue twister there. Okay, so if we look at those tendons, we're going to see that they actually wrap around the inside of here. And there's an area here just over the tarsal bone, which is called the tarsal tunnel. Sometimes people will get numbness, tingling, or sensation in this area. But what's important is to remember is that the three areas around here basically almost fuse together. So what we do is we have three of the tendons coming around. 1, 2, and 3 around the medial malleolus. And then we have an area that goes right across here called a retinaculum. And this retinaculum actually keeps those tendons in place or from bowstringing or coming out. So this is a really important structure to remember in terms of possible sites of entrapment. It's also a site where the posterior tibial nerve is commonly entrapped.